Yeah, g'day everybody. Wade Northhausen here for Billboard Battalion. Today we have in the continuing series of our lead up to the federal election, where we've been interviewing quite a number of the political candidates and also quite a lot of people who have been speaking, on issues that are political and have done for quite a long time. So I thought today we've got somebody who we've known for quite a while. We're going to have one of the Trumpets of Patriots candidates from up north, and she's actually standing in the seat of Page, which is a House of Reps seat. So today is today's the 1st of May, Thursday the 1st of May, 2025. And we've only got a short time to go now before we know who actually is representing us or who is supposed to represent us. We know there's a lot of stuff happening. We've had a very big influx in really terrific people who are standing up as independents and also for the minor parties, the freedom parties. So, that's so great to see, and we really wanted to do what we could to try and publicise all that. So today we've got Donna Pike here, and as I said, Donna is standing for the seat of Page. We've known Donna for a while. She's an absolute fearless fighter in terms of the freedom movement and just trying to hold the government to account, and she's been doing this for quite a long time. So a big g'day to you, Donna, and well, we might have a bit of a look at just a very brief look at how come you got to be standing for the Trumpets of Patriots, Trumpet of Patriots, and also then we might look at some of your policies, the things that really make you stand out as people who are trying to get Australia back on track.
Sure. Well, the reason I did stand were because of the policies. I mean, I wanted to get behind something that I was passionate about, and, I looked at all the different policies from different people, and no one sort of covered it all, exit the WEF, exit the UN, exit the WHO, exit everything, no more lockdowns, no more forced mandates and stuff like that. So, I mean, we tick the box all over the place, I've had a doctor email me recently saying that, they were being forced to maybe do abortions, and that if they didn't want to do them, why would they be made to go through that trauma? And mothers, that were doctors that give birth to their own children and then would be mentally distraught trying to perform things that just ethically were not in their space. And, if the doctors want to do those things and they want to be in that field, that's up to them. But if these women don't want to do this and these men don't want to do that, why is the government now forcing them and maybe trying to put their licenses on the line? A bit like they said, do the vaccines or lose your license. And this is still going on. I'm horrified. So there's many topics. I mean, I could go on for probably quite 12 months, but we haven't got that long. So the Trumpet of Patriots, they're basically saying who will stand up for your freedom. Over the last 3 years, we've heard lots of stuff, but what have they done? What bills have they put in to protect your sovereignty? What bills have they put in to protect your children? What bills have they put forward to protect your skies and to protect, the chemicals and to protect all the things that they're saying that they're agreeing with you, but what have they done? What we need to make sure that it's not all talk and that it is actually action. And, our national identity is another one they've got here. Who will restore your national identity? Like I had a meeting the other night and I said to, we've got all these, hundreds and hundreds of thousands of immigrants, and not that I'm not, sensitive to people that need refugees or immigration, but when you can't house your own people, when they're living in tents, when you've got a nurse that's living in a tent and having to go to hospital and look after people in a hospital atmosphere, an environment, to be a nurse and then living in a tent because she can't afford to, on a single income, to cover rent and bills, that is not Australia. We have to look after our own people first and foremost. You don't go and bring in 50 million kids into your household if you've got a home and you've got 5 kids and you're barely feeding those 5 children and sending them to school and putting a roof over their head. Do you bring in another 5 kids into your house and make yourself homeless for the 10 kids? You don't, do you?
Yeah. No, well, and I think, some of the figures that we've heard just recently are something like 200,000 visas issued in 1 month.
Yeah, well, a lot of them were what you and I both know as political, you know, priorities for them to make for voting, to make them look good that in those agendas. Like, oh, look what we did. We gave you your citizenship, and they'll also more votes, because a citizen can vote. So there's lots of other reasons behind some of these things. And when you start to see, like last year we saw the Teals, this year we're seeing this with immigration, they're using all sorts of ways to make sure the vote just funnels back up to that uni party. And we've got to stop it.
Absolutely. I mean, when you look at some of the policies, and don't get me wrong, the Liberal Party and the Nationals are every bit as bad as the rest of them. But
the Liberal and National are there. Look, I want people to look up the word coalition. That's the Liberal and Nationals together. And you'll also see, look, I've got an email here from Alex Antic, right, saying, under the chaos of the Labor-Greens alliance. These people have done alliances. They're together. They've formed, partnerships in this political realm, and they're in each other's agreements and pockets and all sorts of stuff. And that's how government works. And that's why they say, we've got to give preference to here so that we can even get a look in. The whole coercion of how this government is run, the preferencing system, the way that they give money, like your taxpayers' dollars go out by the billions to go and pay for or millions at least, to go out and pay for all these major parties' advertising. So you vote them back in with your own taxpayers' dollars. Clive Palmer's spending his own money. People go, oh, he's a, how are you doing something that's a millionaire or a trillionaire? I go, well, hang on a minute. He could be retired in the Bahamas and not giving a hoot about what's going on. He doesn't need to. He doesn't need the money. Why is he doing what he's doing? Has anyone thought about that? It's because he's got children and grandchildren. Here's he said, I'm past 80. My life's pretty much at the end of the scale. But my grandchildren and children, they've got a future here. They're Australian. And I'm the same. And you'll find that most people that are running, like we had a chat a while back, Wade, is that we're an older generation. We know what we're losing. We remember what we had as kids. This generation, they don't know. They're just grown up in this bubble of what they've seen in this growth time and this era. But we've seen the past. We've got the knowledge.
Yep.
We have got the knowledge of what's been lost, what's been stripped from our children, and what they're about to lose even more so in the future. And the people that are standing up are people that are fighting against those losses and against what's going to happen, because they can see it coming and they are damn scared about the future. And I'm one of them. I have children and I have grandchildren, and I stepped up because I want to protect my children, my grandchildren, and everybody else's grandchildren and children.
Yes, I 100% agree with that. And like I've known you for a while now, Donna, and the people of our generation, I think that's a big threat to these filthy scum who are attacking our country now. Because we were around in the 80s and 90s,
yes,
and the 70s, and we knew what Australia was like when it was.
60s for me.
Hey?
I said, and the 60s for me.
Well, if you want to know the truth, the 60s for me too.
There you go.
But anyway, this is the thing. We have seen the country then, and we've seen it, I was going to say degenerate, but be sabotaged is what is happening. Yeah. And, the younger people have no point of reference. They don't know what Australia was like when it was great.
No, you're right.
They're only living in the shocking place that it is now.
and the mental manipulation to accept things and the way they do it, the media, the propaganda, and the mind sort of, almost control of what, you see, what you think, and what you do, because that's coming into the AI, just follow everything. Don't think for yourself. Don't scrutinize. Don't think, hang on a minute, let me analyze this. Let me do some of my own research first before I just take it on and think that's okay and that's real.
And this is a big part of the problem, that, the education system when I went to school was a hell of a lot different to the hideous, disgraceful, horrendous joke that it is now. The education system now is not an education system, unless you look along the same lines as Joseph Goebbels, perhaps. It's that kind of education system where kids now are being turned into basket cases. They're being destroyed mentally, emotionally. They're being so confused. Half of them wouldn't know what day it was, let alone what was right or wrong, or even who they are. It's
not just that, like you go back even when children do struggle, and what they do is they pathway them into headspace, into these mental health, arenas, where they just go into the abyss and they get into like this tunnel of what's even worse. And I don't think some of these places are doing the right things. Like if we look at our naturopaths and homeopaths that went into, did degrees in university, they're not funded by Big Pharma. You have to pay for them. But all the knowledge that MTHFR, has the glitch in our genome that can be supported by a premethylated B9 to help the base of mental health. That sort of stuff is not even out there, not pushed. It's not even on the NHS. If you want to go and be tested for the MTHFR gene SNP, you have to pay $60 for it. It's not covered. They don't even want you to know about it. I went into the mental health ward, took the Light newspaper and said, look at all this, look at the excess death paper that's out now. And I think, this one here that says the Light, excess deaths, we all know that that's a new one out that's coming out. We all know, it's not new news anymore. We've got so many reports about Dr. Speecher, his reports about the contamination, about the RNA, DNA. We all know. So we go into there and we say, why aren't you letting people at least know about the MTHFR gene? And that gene, once it is SNP'd, it has a lot of connections to addiction, which includes, there's alcohol, there's drugs, there's all these addictions, right? So if you can, and it's got to do with the vitamin B9 in the brain. So it's like all your B's are your brain, your thinking, so your clarity. So if you take out some of those, then you start to not think right. And then you just go into a funnel of like, okay, let's just Band-Aid with all these programs and these, these businesses that we will manufacture to help you with mental health. We talk to somebody, talk to someone, do this, do that, but not actually ever deal with the root cause. Now, something I want to say too is like on 60 Minutes in 2013, we had a cure for cancer, many cancers, and it was the Hylandria dockrelli. It was the blushwood tree in the Queensland rainforest. And I have done a Zoom with one of the naturopaths up the coast about this. And this scientist, there's two Australian scientists, I think the main one that was interviewed, they did a full clinical study through animals, 100% success rate. All the tumours were destroyed. They did the same with humans. And a woman had a massive tumour under her arm. She said within 24 hours it went purple, black and shriveled up and went away. She didn't have to have surgery. She didn't have to have chemo. There was no side effects. Why are we not funding some of these amazing things when, we don't, and some people don't even know about it or it exists because, it's Big Pharma and the fact that, and the pharmaceutical companies and the FDA, which are all connected, they'll charge you $1 million to get it through, to get to approve. So it's like FDA approved. And by then you need all this money to do it. And then if you don't have the money, and then no one's going to give you the money because all the people with lots of money are usually on that end of the scale, the big pharma companies or what have you, you have to almost crowdfund to try and get something that's going to be, and it's not in their best interest to fund something like that because then it would take the cancer industry down maybe. So like, we've got to look at all these things. We've got to look at all the different avenues in life that are just not being talked about, and I want to improve things. I mean, you look at JFK Jr. in overseas, he's trying to bring out this information about good food, take the colours and the crap out of our kids' food, take it out of our diet, get some decent vitamins and food into the food system. I mean, we've got Bovea in milk, for goodness sake. They want us to eat manufactured lab-grown meat. They want to put bugs in the food. You know, I mean, what is going on?
Well, that's a very good question. I'm glad you asked, because this is what I, as you know, constantly go around the country speaking to, when people say, well, that very question, what's going on? So there actually is a very specific answer as to what's going on. And a lot of people you talk to, they go, oh, it's all about the money. It's all about the money. You know, no, it actually isn't. And so, you know, we've had many conversations in the past. It's about the likes of, and I'd like to touch on this, the World Economic Forum and the United Nations and the World Terrorist Organization. The World Health Organization, sorry, run by a terrorist.
This is why our party is to exit all of that, because we cannot take Australia back and run our own country and protect our people until we do.
Exactly right. So, you know, I'd like to talk, you know, you spoke about natural products there, you know, there's things that can knock out diseases and so on. So a big part of what is happening, you know, what do you see as, if they bring in the likes of the international health regulations like we know they are, one of the disasters of that is to start using the powers of that to shut down completely. And I really need to stress this point. It is to shut down completely any kind of natural healing, any kind of herbalist, people who deal with everything from crystals to vibrations to mushrooms to different kinds of vitamins, different kinds of things like that, right down and including just eating good quality, fresh food.
Yeah.
So,
well, the thing is, if you don't have those options, it's like what they did to small business. They wanted to shut all the small businesses down, because what happens then? It all funnels into the Coles, the Woolies, the BlackRock, the State, you know, the Vanguard and the State Street economy, which is all the bankers' money. You know, it all goes up the chain to them, and they just make trillions and trillions of dollars. And you know, if you keep your small businesses open, those small businesses, the owners of those businesses, they've got money to put food on the table. They've got money to put petrol in their car. They've got money to pay their electricity bill. They've got money. And then when they've got money, they hire staff, and those staff have then got money to pay their electricity bill, pay their food bill, and to put a roof over their heads. So the economy grows, it expands, and it becomes viable, and it becomes bottom up. But minute you take out all the small business and then you shut the economy down and you break it, which is what happened with COVID, what happens? It all funnels back up to the top. And if you take out all natural medicine and all the vitamins and all those things, or the companies buy them out under the brand of their names, then the money just funnels back up to them. So it is about, you know, control and money. And we have to stop that. We know, Wade, there used to be a situation in our country, and I'm sure, I don't know if there was a law, but it should be if there's not, that you weren't allowed to have multiple ownership. There had to be, you know, competitive business in the country always, because if you took that away, you had dictatorship on, you know, and people could just align and they could just charge you whatever, which is a little bit like what's happening in the electricity companies. I think Red Energy is the only Australian one. You know, so when you start to look at this sort of thing happening, you know, if you don't keep that opposition going, there's, you know, what have you got? You got dictatorship, and that's the same in the government. If you don't keep these little people in that are keep everyone accountable, you know, you've just got the, you know, the ball's in your court, the ball's in your court, the ball's in your court. You know, it's just a seesaw, and they both do the same thing. You're not getting anywhere.
I'd like to think that, you know, even with Trumpet of Patriots, with many of the, you know, we've interviewed a lot of the other freedom parties and candidates and so on, and you know, it'd be good to see the actual real diversity of voices in the parliament, because, you know, even to the point of, if there's some sort of an issue, someone says, We took it to our member of parliament, and they said, no, it's not the feds, it's the state. And then you go to the state government, and they, no, this is a federal issue. And then
why can't the federal candidate that gets the issue forward it on to the state on behalf of that person through them and say, look, this is a state issue. It's not a federal issue, but as a federal candidate, I want you to look at this on behalf of this person and say, this is an issue that's come through, and I would like to put it forward and support them.
Precisely. And this is you talked about no competition in retail. And I think to myself, they've got the two-party preferred base thing here, and they've basically got the three levels of government. That's all right. Mm-hmm. Surely out of just that, and this is why we need people like yourself to be in Parliament, as you can pull these people up.
Yes.
Real Australians who have real jobs, real businesses, real families, not a lot of these plastic robots.
But also people that can't be bought, bribed, or fear-mongered.
That's one of the big issues. Yes, of course, because there always seems to be they've been got at somehow. There's always some way that they end up, as you said, bribed or even blackmailed or pressured or given certain deals or something where they, all right, I better shut me trap because I've been doing the wrong thing as well. So this is something where Donna Pike can't be bought, can't be bribed, can't be paid off.
That's it. I'm a tough nut. And I stand for freedom, 100%. I think people that know me and that have listened to me over the years, I ran the Freedom Festival in Coffs Harbour. I brought everyone together there, because I wanted to see change, and I did it by myself, because I decided, hey, something had to happen. I've been at the rallies, I've done all sorts of things where, and spoke at different events and things like that when, things were happening. And I just really am passionate about this country and about the people in this country. And we don't get the platforms to meet the candidates and to talk to them and to see what they're about a lot of the time. We're only 2 days out. They reckon 70% of people already voted. The chance that this would make a bit of a difference might be some, and by the time it gets circulated, it's probably menial in its capacity, of how much an impact it will make. I think what we need to do if there is a future vote, because I don't know after this vote whether what's going to happen, to be honest. But if there is an opportunity, I think we need to start, 3-4 a month in, of getting ready to do this sort of thing, and to contact these people that do stand, that we know are worth backing, and get right behind them. And not only that, like people are just, sitting back at the polling booths to hand out flyers. I could do with 100 more, 200 more volunteers. But you know what our vote did? Realistically, it's a 2-week pre-poll, which means everyone voted pre-poll, didn't they? They just made an excuse to do it. They knew that. That was just another thing, right? And it was during business hours, which people work. So how are you going to get volunteers if you're not paying them like the big parties pay them, $38 or whatever it is an hour, whatever they do, or the teals who have like multiple money? How do they, like I look at the candidate that's in the Coffs Cowper area, which I'm on a border with, and down there we got there, and there's just tents and banners and flyers, and there's so much money there. And one of the actual volunteers themselves said, that she's got about 6,000. I'm like, what? Throughout the whole electorate. You pay that many people, so I went on the AEC website and had a look, and there was $964,000 of private donation money that went to her, Kaz Heiss in Cowper. So I was like, well, that's fun. That's huge funding, and in those election times when I was back then, I got zero.
Mm.
Because we have to put them out. It's legal. You have to put it out there, what your donations were, where they come from, and who donated money to you. And that's not how much money you get back from the votes. Our money, if you run for a party, goes back to the party itself. They pay you sometimes a bit of it, whatever, depends. But if you're an independent, you get the votes, the percentage of the vote money. So, it's very there's a lot of money. And then that's not this year's amount of money that was donated. That was that year. So we're talking sometimes millions and millions of dollars for these independents. They're very rich independents, aren't they?
Well, I mean, you've just got to look at the backing of them. And I think a lot of these teals are probably pretty well off in their own right, because they seem to live in some fairly affluential places, particularly when it comes to them standing up and going, no, we don't want, for example, we don't want wind turbines in our skyline. They can take them and go and dump them at someone else's place. And when you look at the people who are backing all these teals and so on, there's a huge amount of money there. So, I suppose you might get people who look at Clive Palmer and say, oh, you've got it so well. You've got all these millions and millions of dollars behind you. But I think, people don't say that about the same kind of thing as the left wingers.
Yeah. But it's not just that. It's not just that. Think about it, right? At the end of the day, who do you want running your country? Do you want someone that has a business sense, that's capable of making millions of dollars, that has already a track record of being successful? Or do you want someone that's, going to put your country and has already put your country in massive trillions of dollars of debt?
And especially when a huge amount of that has been over the last 5 years because of the biggest fraud and scam in human history being this COVID garbage. So, the debt that they've put our country in, if you look at the overall grand plan, part of the plan is to send countries into economic ruin. Yep. And I think that's what we've seen from COVID and the massive amount of businesses that were shut down and lost, the transfer of that custom and that commerce to the big places, the likes of, the Bunningses and all this sort of stuff, all the big supermarkets where the small ones couldn't operate, they couldn't work, all the shutdowns. The whole thing's a disaster. So is that something that Clive has some kind of strategy, or Trumpet of Patriots has some sort of strategy to try and fix that up if you get into
we are exit the WEF, exit the UN, exit everything. So when the policies are coming in to shut down through those avenues, they're not there anymore, they're gone. Like, we're physically cutting ties so that we make our own rules in our own country. So why would we have reasons to do those sorts of things if we're not being told by the overlords to do it? That's the reason we're cutting it off, because we're cutting those areas where they can infiltrate into our government. We've got our own scientists, we've got our own professionals that we can listen to regarding things that we should be doing. And I think we also better start listening to them, and appreciating them and respecting them. Because when our doctors, were told, for the first time, I think it was in history, you do what you're told or you lose your license, maybe threaten their licenses. I mean, that was disgusting. That they started to realize what's going on here, some of them, and they all left their jobs. You look at Dr. William Bay, you look at people that lost everything because they decided to stand their ground and say, I'm not going to do this. Moral ground, And I just want to say, like, I want to read some of the stuff like our policy, because I haven't really done that. It's time to drain the swamp is exactly some of their words. They focus on democracy, individual freedoms, freedom of speech, reducing government intrusion in our lives, and breaking the duopoly of the government. Real choice and real liberty. Encourage people to ask themselves if they're unhappy with the way their lives become and expensive to manage. Are you disturbed by your nation? Are you troubled by the erosion of the Australian values that you think that you had and that you can see just flying out the door these days? The electorate for 2025, you must vote differently if you want something different. If you keep voting the same, you're going to get the same. We really need to look at the fact that, Labor, Liberals, the Teals and the Greens are just another nail in Australia's coffin. Vote one for us is going to be the only way you're going to get change. And you look on our actual Senate ballot, we're the only ones that don't preference a major party or a lead that goes to that end degree, like, because the preferences go there after that. So if you look at the fact that that we've actually cut them out and said, let's push us into the part where we're the balance of power, and we've got that stronghold through there, because we sort of are aiming for that, because at the moment you've got the Greens, and I won the Coffs Harbour Environment Award off the mayor. I'm the one that came up with the idea to recycle rubbish into separate bins, which eventually turned into the green, red and yellow bin system around Australia. That was me. And I've never seen the environment decimated more than it is being decimated now under the vise of saving it. I can't believe it. I'm gobsmacked, because people do care for the environment. It's a natural thing to do that.
Yeah, of course.
You don't live in your house and want it to be, a sewage pit. You want it to be, nice and livable and functional. So we want the planet to be the same. But the spin, that they've put on this, that they've taken in this word green, and they've turned it into the word destruction. I don't know how that happened.
I like the change in vocals there when you say destruction, because that's absolutely what we're dealing with. These Greens, and so many people now say, if you remember old Bob Brown, who set up the Greens when he was carrying on up at the Franklin River there in Tassie. So many people now say, the Greens have been completely hijacked by communist operators who hate Australia. And when you look at the actions of the Greens, and I must say the Teals as well, and the Labor Party for that matter, you are absolutely spot on. You would have to say they hate Australia. They're trying to destroy it. They're trying to destroy the wealth and the industry and the jobs and the money that's available.
Wade, the biggest owner of American farmland is Bill Gates.
Yes.
Who's going to be the biggest owner of Australian farmland? The Chinese. I mean, seriously, we lease our water, we lease our ports, because you know what? You play the game Monopoly. If you sell all your assets and privatize all your assets, what do you got left to sell?
That's it. Yeah.
You go into debt to debt to debt to debt. Okay. You need to have the assets. You need to be manufacturing. You need to be making money. You can't just keep selling off more stuff. Eventually your country's sold out and you've got nothing left.
So that sort of stuff, that was being said to people such as myself 40 years ago. And
it's the same as if you've got a budget in a household, right? You've got $100 to go and buy your food. Okay. Now you get to the checkout. If you don't stick to the $100, you go to pay for it and they go, sorry, that's declined. You haven't got enough money for that. So you have to stay within the amount you've got to be able to buy that food. And then otherwise you're what? Going into debt. So our government just go into debt. Yeah. Constantly go into debt. And they don't use the money they've got strategically and carefully to make sure that the people in this country benefit the most from it. We're buying Chinese products and Chinese items by the truckload, and we're not manufacturing here. Even our cars were lost. We're not manufacturing anything hardly anymore. So all we're doing is our economy, our money, our work, our taxes, everything that we make is being purchased on overseas products, and that money then is the betterment of that country. It makes that country rich, mainly China. China's getting filthy rich off our purchases and our money, but it doesn't come back into our country. It doesn't recycle back into our economy. It goes to theirs, and we're going down the gurgler while we're taking in tons and tons of extra immigrants and people that we can't house and we can't financially keep. All of our equities being sold, all of our money's going out of the country to the betterment of every other country. What sort of picture does that make?
So what would be, and I suspect that you would have had some sort of meetings with Clive Palmer or some sort of discussions at some point being a candidate.
That's not the case. We get the policies, we get the ideas, and we've had the opening ceremony up the top in Queensland. But but like until we're voted in, what I mean, we do get our candidate book and stuff. We know where our direction is, but until we get voted in, I mean, they're not going to disclose all the extra stuff and their tactics and what they're going to do because we're not actual candidates yet. So we have to be, you have to be in there. I mean, Babette is with us. I mean, because he was, Clive tried to re-register the UAP and he couldn't. So he ended up having to do this because the AEC wanted to cut him off altogether. But as you've already interviewed with other people and probably ascertained that. But so Babette screams and carries on. I'm pretty sure I've heard, he's had death threats and all sorts of stuff, even just, with things he tries to say. I mean, and he's a very fierce and very strong speaker, and he's an immigrant. He came from overseas, And the thing is, and he says that Australia was a place where you get to come in, but you get to work hard and make a living here, just like everybody else, and you get to adapt to the Australian way. Why come into this country because you think Australia's got wonderful things to offer and a beautiful place to live, and change it to be like your country where you just left? What's the point?
So once again, Donna, that's a great question, and there is actually an answer for it. And if we look at, we discussed before, 200,000 immigrants a month. So if you took a year, that's basically 10% of your population you've imported. Our
policy is to stop this, to really cut and stop the immigration down to 80%, like to mainly look after our own first, because we recognise that immigration is having a massive social impact, and some of these the people that are coming in are not being monitored, they're not being checked. I mean, we've had, as you've heard on the radio, 80-year-old women, attacked and brutally assaulted. Yes. I mean, goodness me, if we can't protect our elderly, this is insanity. I was at a meeting the other day and I brought it up in front of Kevin Hogan, which Kevin left 3/4 of the way through. He just happened to have a meeting. So because we brought up some very good conversations about, issues that don't usually get talked about and obviously people don't want to talk about. But I'm really passionate for homelessness. I was the person that did a full, proposal to the Coffs Harbour Council on homelessness, told them to step up and to pilot projects in the area well before it became a thing. A bit like the recycling. I've done lots of things in my days where I will initiate something and I'll come up with the idea and say, look, this could happen. We could do this. There are ideas out there. Let's try to implement them. Let's try to do something rather than just talk about it, because I'm sick of the talk. I'm sick of it. And I'm the only one that I know, Wade, that has pledged to give 1/3 of my wage, if I'm elected, back to the Page community to support areas of homelessness and, prevention for youth suicide and projects, and not just dish it into government projects where they probably aren't working, but to actually look at innovative ways where we can educate and look at different other ways of healing and fixing people and put my money where my mouth is so that I can assist in those areas. And I want to go out to the community and go to the towns. And for the very first time, which I'm sure half of them don't hear from anyone else like Kevin or anyone until it's election time. Hello, phone call, whatever. You don't contact me all year, but you want to ring me when it's time to be re-elected. And you put $1 million worth of flyers out there just so that, of our money, just so we can elect you again. But I want to actually listen to the townspeople. I want to go out to them and say, what are your main areas that you need fixed in your area? And then collate those as the most, important things within their own little communities, and then go back and fight for funding for those things and to fix those things so that they're happy in their community, and so that they feel like, oh, she's doing stuff for us. She's actually our voice, because we are their representatives. We are not their dictators. Yep. We are supposed to be a representative of their voice.
So have you had much on whatever level of campaigning that you've done? Have you had getting much of an idea of what the people in your electorate now are starting to look for? What is their issues of concern? Are you starting to get a bit of a picture at all?
Yeah, I've been.
And I suppose the main thing, why hasn't this been addressed by whoever's the incumbent there at the minute?
Yeah. Okay. Well, flooding, because Lismore got flooded several times. I went up to go to Nimbin, which is right at the top. I've done lots of trips around, dropping things around and talking to people. But I went up to Nimbin and I went to go down one road, totally fallen apart, totally washed away. And now the people have to take a big diverted trip right through another whole area to get through the Nimbin township. So I couldn't believe how bad that was, where it's just non-existent anymore. The road's gone. So there's big, some of these rural areas suffer, really, really dreadful roads. They're potholes and they're shocking and they're dangerous. We're losing people on them, because it gets quite bad.
Yep.
I don't know if anyone knows, but I lost my brother a while ago on a gravel road. So, these sorts of things happen, and when you lose people, you start to see that. And I think the other thing, Wade, is we've had a lot of people damaged. They've had the vaccine, they're finding the mRNA, the RNA contamination, and they know that there's going to be an onslaught of all different things. We know there's increases in turbo cancer. We know there's increases in certain things. We need to medically support these people with some good, healthy support. And I know that, Sue Ellen has talked about that, with a Marie Z interview, that, we need to help these people because they've gone out there thinking they were doing the right thing and they put their lives out there and did what they thought was, to keep their jobs and keep their mortgages.
And some people were forced into it as well.
Oh, very forced. I'm gobsmacked. I had a young fellow come to my house. He was selling solar or something, and we happened to get chatting to him. And this was a conversation we had, and I was gobsmacked by the end of it because he said to me, look, I was at school and I saw he witnessed this, that this one girl didn't want to be vaccinated, and he saw them hold her down and force vaccinate her at school. And he said, I was witness to that. And I was like, what? Like, where are these stories? Like, I've never heard of that before. Like, this was in my local area. I was like, I don't believe that, Nellie. It was just so shocking to have him say that. And I was like, really? I said, I want to speak to this girl. We need to hear these stories. We need to hear these real life situations. I mean, my father was put into hospital. He was told he had pneumonia. He had staph infection and a urinary tract infection, and the doctor, who was a respiratory specialist, Lismore, rang me and said, he's going to pass away by morning. We anticipate he'll be dead by morning. We're letting you know to organise his funeral. My dad's bedbound. He had emphysema, he had issues, and my brother, who thought the doctor was right, because you just think, agreed to put him on the end of life program without sort of knowing too much. And I said to my brother, is he in a coma? Is he got organ failure? And he said, no, I think he's just really tired. And, of course, if you've got an infection, your blood pressure's down and you're tired. So I said, hang on a minute. So I grabbed 2 bottles of colloidal silver, threw them in my bag and drove to Lismore, straight there. They had to let me stay because it's end of life. So I sat near his bedside and I gave him sips of colloidal silver all night long. By morning, he was up telling jokes and right as rain. And I said to Dad, look, Dad, I said to the doctor, look, he's fine. He's come back. He's good. His infections have gone. I want you to take him off end of life. And they sort of didn't say anything to me. Then they came back and I said, Dad, you need to say to them, you're the patient. You say to them 3 times, look, I don't want to die,
Yep.
And so he did. He said to them to their face, I don't want to die, 3 times. And then the doctor just asked him these questions constantly, which Dad got right continually. 100 minus 7 minus 7 minus 7. Spell the word world backwards. Dad's pretty good. But then they said, oh, who's the president of Australia? And laughingly, and Dad, with his, sense of humour, said Klaus Schwab. We just had a giggle. But the doctor took it. That's it, medical incognate. You can't tell me you don't want to die because I'm going to ride you off as medically incognate. And I was like, wow. So we knew straight away. And I said, well, I'm luckily enough I had medical guardianship. And I said, well, no, I'm going to pull rank and say I've got medical guardianship. I actually had it transferred on the way driving already in readiness, and so they knew I had it. In the end, they got it, and I just had to fight them. They weren't going to let him off, and they said, oh, we want your brothers to come in and make a unanimous decision and all this, and they waited till like 1 o'clock. Why didn't you just ask them over the phone? was it okay if Donna does this? I mean, as a question easy, they could have said yes, but no, they were waiting to see if Dad would maybe fail between then and 1 o'clock. But they came in, they went, oh, no, Donna's, definitely Donna. And we got Dad off and he got into general care. I found lots of fluid. You can drown someone with too much fluid with emphysema. I found multiple fluid patches under his arms, called that out as well. My dad was discharged from hospital. He went home.
Great news. And that is fantastic news. Yeah. And well done to you, Donna, because
he's not with us now, but there was other issues. He later on, 6 weeks later, I got a call saying he was in a coma, non-responsive. On his only thing written on his medical forms was "Do not resuscitate if I'm in an irretrievable coma." Yeah. And he got detoxed and he went home again. Well, and there was another situation after that when I was in WA where he did pass and I wasn't there. But these are the sorts of things, once you start to experience what's going on. I also lost all my bees when the bees all got killed. I also, was given a gathering fine, which I fought for 2.5 years in the court system. I lost it in the magistrates, which I shouldn't have, because even the police's both my police body cams went missing. Hello. Both my police's statements weren't even the same. One said 5 to 10 people. The other one said 20 to 30. They were totally conflicting. I cross-examined them myself. I represented myself. And then I went into the district court and I won, appealed it and won. And then I went costs against the police because, the thing was, they want to, when you're a very strong personality, if they can put a federal conviction on you, then you can't run for politics.
Yeah, of course. Mate, there's every dirty trick in the book. In terms of people going into hospital and defending their own relatives and protecting their lives, or people who take on the system, and defend themselves against the corrupt, illegal system. There's more and more of that happening, and it's really great to see stories where that is happening. And then we see somebody who does that, and then they're standing for Parliament. So, I think that that speaks volumes. That just speaks absolute volumes on what sort of person we've got, up around the Coffs Harbour area, standing for Trumpet of Patriots.
And Wade, can I just say with farmers, I went to Kyoga High School. I won the country whip cracking competition for Outback Queensland. Just so you know.
Why doesn't that surprise me?
Well, there you go. But I just wanted to let you know that, I'm appalled with what's happening to the Aussie farmers. These are our bread and butter on the table. This is our food, our economy. Yep. They are decimating them. And they're not only that, they're dictating what they pay for their produce, and they're farmers that have been 3 generations. I've heard your stories about what's happening in their sheds. I've heard what's, the lives that are being lost and the depression that's happening. I'm shocked and I'm gutted, and I will fight for Aussie farmers because they're our backbone of this country, and if we don't have good food, we don't have good nutrition, we don't have good health. It's all connected, and if we decimate our farmers and our land and our the people that are working, their backside off in 24-hour days sometimes, and going to bed, with not seeing their children and having to just push through the day to get to make ends meet. We're in big trouble in this country. I know what, this fake food, I don't want that. I want to support our farmers. I want clean air, clean energy, clean food, clean everything. That's my policy. I know Trumpet of Patriots have their policies and they have their core ones, but I like to express also what concerns me as an individual, because we are individuals. Even though we run for a group, we're individuals, and I want to make sure that people know that I'm definitely for the farmers and that I will fight for them as well. And I'm in a rural area. I'm in a farming sort of area where, it matters, and it does matter, because we have got farmers up there and people that do produce, and I fight for the markets. I fight for the people being able to go out there and earn that income selling produce and having their own home gardens, and this is all so important to us all. And I can't believe that the Australian people are letting Coles and Woolies, which is where you get this monopoly again, dictate to our farmers how much they pay for their produce, and then saying, well, it's you've got to work harder, you've got to have better equipment, you've got to go into debt more to be able to, it's your practice, it's your efficiency that's the problem. It's not us, it's not the fact that we're not paying you. That's all rubbish.
Well, farmers in Australia sadly seem to be price takers, not price makers. And I don't know how many stories we can tell you of farmers who have been destroyed by Coles and Woolworths with agreements to buy produce and then pulling out or dropping the price or altering things or just shocking, terrible. There's so many farmers in Australia who have ploughed their crops back in the ground. They've grown them.
Yeah. I've
They've
seen
got them ready to harvest, and then Coles or Woolworths have come along and gone, oh, no, we're only going to pay you this much, which means that the farmers wouldn't even get back the price of harvesting and transport to Coles. So they just go, well, we'll put the tractor in and we'll just plough it all in. You've got beautiful, fresh food that is being ploughed in, and this is a part of the strategy from the World Economic Forum, of which Coles and Woolworths are a part, to send our farmers broke, because getting rid of food production is one of their big ticket items, and starving people, that is part of their agenda. And you mentioned before about your own bees, getting rid of backyard gardens and having your own few animals, for meat or your chooks for eggs or what have you. All that is to go, the whole lot. So that's why I keep continually bringing people back to the likes of the World Economic Forum or the World Health Organization and the impending...
Wait, if we get rid of them all, which are our policies, that's all gone.
Well, it's certainly admirable policies. I would love to see that because they are an absolute disaster. And, for the people that had to put up with what happened through COVID, the fraud of COVID, the lies, the destruction, the poisoning of people, the killing of people, the murder of people, they're planning on doing all this again through the international health regulations. Of which
I want to remind people that they built the Moderna factory in our country worth millions, right? If they did that, what do they intend to do with it?
It's not because it was just a good idea at the time. They thought it'd make a nice landmark. So people need to understand, as I said, they've got the international health regulations coming into effect in the end of July if we can't stop it. They've already built all the, they call them the quarantine centres all over Australia, but they're not quarantine centres. They're a lot more serious and worse and nefarious than that. They're putting in place the digital currency, the digital identification.
Which we're against.
What's that?
Which we are against, digital.
Yeah, and look, I would love to see the clash where Trumpet of Patriots and, the Libertarians and People First and all the other parties.
What we would have liked to have seen, Wade, was for them all to come in with us and make it a big force this year where we could have all come together, run some amazing candidates between us, and just forge that freedom group into the government. Why didn't that happen? Why you got to ask yourself, why didn't that happen? Because I don't know. Anyway,
so I just, I have spoken to a number of other candidates and different people and commentators about the freedom movement, so to speak. If the freedom movement could come together as a force, we've seen, and the Labor Party, they're always out working hard. They've got their people, irrespective of whether their bad policies are shockers. They're still on the case. The Greens are doing it flat out all the time. Libs and the Nats, they're all out there. The Teals.
They work together, and they're all in lockstep. We are all broken up and dysfunction. But the problem is, you've got Jared Rennick, who got obviously ostracized from his party, if that's the case. Who knows? But at the end of the day, he's up against Malcolm, and then you're looking at losing one of them. So, they instead of being they were aligned with the COVID thing and they were working together, but now they're sort of in opposition and they're attacking each other for the job, and this is what sometimes can happen. if you've got then if you're in opposition to someone as your pay packet and you're trying to keep your job, then you can turn. See people turning, and this is where it's at. Like, I think the problem is we need to make sure that we all are one party and we have these incredible people in all the different areas, and we have the best, and we know, and we have people that we know we can rely on to get in there and do the job, because that's what we have to have at the end of the day. Because all these people that talk, like, we hear them, every day we go, politicians just lie, and then, they get their job, they get back in, they just do the same thing. And that's the sort of mindset, but people just expect that. We need to expect more. Yeah. We need to want more, and we need to demand more.
I was going to say demand more. Yes, we need to, and as not only the freedom movement, as a country, we need to, in combination, put the pressure on these politicians and say, well, your results are terrible. The policies you've brought in are terrible. But what we've got, sadly, is a country where most people couldn't give a stuff about politics, couldn't care less. They think that they're constantly told the politicians are liars. They don't do what they say. They get in. They only use you. They tell lies to get into Parliament. Then they do the exact opposite. So.
But that's the other thing, the apathy. But the other problem is that you've got those people that say don't vote. And then you go, well, if you don't vote, then they keep going and doing exactly what they're doing because that's consent for them to do that. So the only way for you, which is what I came to that sort of part of the journey was get in there, get in there and change it, because what else have we got left to do? We've tried everything else. We've tried the rallies. We've tried the petitions. We've tried this and tried that. We've tried ourselves stupid. We need to do something. We need to act. We need to get in there and take some action and physically do stuff, and if this is the way we have to do it, then that's the way we do it, but we do it passionately with joint arms and in a humanitarian force, but we're not doing that. And this election should have been that. This election we had the chance, this election, to do something major.
Well, the scene was set, and the one thing that we can absolutely guarantee is that if you do nothing, if you abstain, if you don't take part, then it's going to go bad. It's you've taken every opportunity and stuffed it up. So, but I think that's probably at this point a great thing to finish on, because we're just about we've got about a minute and a half or something like that left before we lose our
well, I just want to quickly say we're going to abolish the student HECS debt. We've got all these young kids that are, the pioneers that will be the future of our country, the minds and stuff, and we're saddling them with massive debts, and it's causing mental health issues and stress. They've been stressed or studying all the time, and we put them through this system so they become these great people and build roads and have this great capacity in our economy, and then we ladled them with massive debts and struggling minds with HECS debts that are as big as sometimes mortgages, and then they can't have children because they're paying this debt. They can't get a car loan. They can't even get a home loan because they've already got the debt.
Absolutely,
this stuff's insanity.
It is crazy. It's mad. It's ridiculous.
And the Greens are going to legalise, drugs that I do not want free and on the street, so that our children can all go and end up in massive mental health problems and increase the mental health ward. I don't want that either. Look at the Green policies for their drugs. I mean, I support cannabis. I support some of those areas. It's the common sense ones. But there's some of those things in there, they're insane. Yeah. We're going to actually look at, they said, we want to stop smoking. But what did they do after that? What did the government freely let into the country? The Chinese vapes. And they made them popcorn and, lolly flavoured. And you see people putting them in the kids' mouths. I mean, it's insanity.
It is madness. And so we're at our time now, Donna. So look, I would really, really love to say thanks very much for coming on. We wish you all the best of luck, and it'd be great to talk to you again after the weekend and just have a bit of an idea of what all happened and how it's gone, mate. So thanks very much, Donna. Very much appreciate that. So we'll catch up with you again very soon, okay? And best of luck, mate.
And don't forget, vote Trumpet of Patriots if you want to save your freedom in this country, because it's most important. This is an important election, Wade.
Absolutely, yes. Yes, it is. All right. Thanks,
You're
Donna.
up there and you're left out and you haven't voted yet. Be careful about how you tick those boxes or mark those boxes. And don't forget, you have to put every number in 1 to 10 or 1 to 11 or whatever in the House of Reps. Don't just put, in number sequence. And if you do the Senate, you can go up the top and you can mark every different group. We've got an example, and you can leave all the major parties out altogether.
Absolutely.
You can't on the reps, you can't on the little one. You have to
Yeah.
mark everybody. But on the
Okay.
white Senate paper, you don't even have to put them in at all.